Okay, so on the pasuk Vayokom Avram Me'al Pnei Mesai, the Medrash says, Medrash Rabbi Melamed, that this pasuk teaches us Shahoyo Roye Malach Hamoves Matris Kenegdoi. How do we translate matris kenegdo? It means he was protesting against him. He was opposing him. Maybe he was teasing him. He saw the malach hamoves being matris kenegdo. But how does the Medrash see this in the pasuk Vayokom Avram Me'al Pnei Mesai Vayedaber El Bnei Ches Lemor? From this, the Medrash says Malamed. Jehoya Roya Malach Hamoves Matris Kenegdoi. So, in the Sefer Teferes Shloime, Shloime HaKohen Miradomsk was one of the great Hasidic Rebbes, was Nifter in Tov Reish Chov Vov, that corresponds to 1866. So he writes in the Teferes Shloime as follows. Hanira bebir hamedrash ki l'choire ein lohovin ma hoya kosher loy labal hamedrash hazeh. We don't know what was bothering him. Ve'eich muchach min hamikra hazeh. How does he see in this pasuk? Shehoyo malach hamoves matris kenegdoi. Ochein hanira li bekavanas hamedrash. What it would seem to me, says the Teferes Shloime in the kavanas hamedrash, ki yesh ledayik b'hakosov. Shenemar vayovoy Avrom lispoid lisoro v'livkoiso. V'loy nemar she'osa kein. It says Vayovay Avram Lispoid L'Serval of Kaisa. He came to give a hesped, but did he give a hesped? Doesn't appear at all in the pasuk. It says Vayovay Avram Lispoid L'Serval of Kaisa, and immediately it says Vayokom Avram Me'al Pnei Mesa. So it would seem that in the end he didn't give a hesped. He came to give a hesped, but in the end he was immediately Vayokom Avram Me'al Pnei Mesa. So the question is, Lama hisnachem mila haspida. Why did he change his mind and decide not to give a hesped? Lochein bo bal hamedrash letaretz. Shehoya roya malach hamoves matris kenegdoi. That the reason was because the malach hamoves was teasing him. V'ha'inyan hu al derech hakosav vayaster Moshe ponov ki yorei mehabit el ha'elokim. When the Elokim was nesgala to Moshe Rabbeinu in the burning bush in the sneh, it says Va Yaster Moshe Ponov. He hid his face. Ki Yori Mehabit Elo Elokim. And what's the idea? He says V'rotzoloi. Medihine Zeh Klal Godel B'Mailos HaTzadikim HaMeshalchem L'Fnei Elokim B'Samim. Af im Chalila boy lei Midas Hadin leize Yochid El Rabbi. If they're experiencing a Midas Hadin difficulties, tzoros for the yochid or for the rabbim, chas v'sholem lo yitnu libam lehizboinen mahus hatzarahi. They don't get into it. They don't think about the tzara and the mahus of the tzara. Rachmana litzlam v'lo yipoil levavam lahakshois madua osa Hashem kochel oretz hazayis. They don't ask the question why. Ki libam nochoinu batuach b'Hashem. Itzadik v'yosher hu kela muna ve'inovel v'nafechu ki mipi elyon lo yetzu harois rakulo mechuvanim l'toiva. And therefore they don't get sucked into the tsaris, and they don't think about how terrible their state is and why is this happening. So he says v'lachein ba'oiser inyan kashiro Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashol mara hasne hamoir ala golos. I mean, the burning bush really represents the Klal Yisrael going up in flames. Vasne einenu uchol. Nevertheless, it doesn't get burnt, but we're experiencing the golus. So loy rotzah his boin in mazev al mazeh. He didn't want to look at it. Ach vayaster pono. He hid his face. Ki yorei mehabit uleistakel el bechinas ha'elokim v'hadinim pen yikshe be'einav al kocha. He didn't want to look because he worried that he's going to have negative thoughts about the Rebbeinu Shalom Sanhogit. And we know how sensitive he was, says the Teferes Shloime. Kasher holach b'shlichus hazeh v'som liboy l'tzaron shel Yisrael lo yochol lisboil oid. He couldn't take it. V'tzoak v'omar loma harei oisa lo mazeh v'nenash miyad, and he was punished for that. Be'emor loy ato sire v'lo yoyse k'may mechazal, that you'll see Yetzias Mitzrayim, but later you will not be zoiche to enter Eretz Yisrael. So you see that Moshe Rabbeinu really had that sensitivity, and it was hard for him to handle the seeing the tzoros of Yidden, and therefore Vayaster Moshe Panov Ki Yorei Mehabit Elo Elokim. V'zeu shomer hakosov mi ha'isha chofetz chayim oyev yomim liris toiv rotzoloi mi atzadik asher kol hayomim roye ki hakol rak toiv mi Hashem Yisborach. Oz memele al yidei kein yintzoi l'shoynei miro. He'll never have a negative word to say about the Rebbeinu Shalom ki lo yera be'enov klal al Hashem Yisborach, because he always sees it as good. Liris toiv. Now says that the Tiferes Shlomi v'hinei kein adover hoyo eitzel Avram Avinu olav Hashalom k'shebol lispoid l'sora. He came to give a hesped on Sara. Malach HaMavis matris kenegdoi rotzaloyma. K'shehischile his boinen al misa Sara hatzadekis. He started thinking about the passing of his wife, the great tzadekis Sara. Asher me'olam hoysa eim kol b'nei Yisrael v'tikun chave v'ruach hakodesh medaberes mitzvach groina. She was such a great woman. Va'ato pisoy mesa olov achrei mailas ha'akeda. Shezochsel ben tzadik hazeh v'lo hoya lo klum. Kol zeh hoya yetzahara machnis beliboy shel Avram Avinu leba'avur yikshe be'enov v'yeira al ma'aseh Elokim. The yetzahara was putting into his mind, how great she was, and she was so great, and nevertheless she died, and you should be upset about that, and you should be chas v'sholom upset at the Rebbeinu Shalom for doing this. Lochen kesheroh zeh miyad pirish v'lo yispida vayokom al pnei meisai. So he says he really changed his mind. The Medrash is saying, because why does it say why didn't he give the hesped, as it's just said in the previous pasuk, that he came lispoid l'sorvel of kaisa? Teretz is because hoya malach hamavis matris kenegdoi, and he was worried that he'll have negative thoughts as he gives the hesped, and he thinks into the milas of Sara, he'll become upset, and therefore he decided he's not going to give the hesped. And Vayokam Avram me'al pnei meisoi vayidaber el bnei ches. Now we're talking about Avram Avinu, who was already mekayim the tzivui of kachno as bincha as yichidcha asher ahavta as yitzchok v'alei Hashem lo'ila. He was willing to give everything up for the Rebbeinu Shalom. His entire future he was giving up. There would be no hemshich to Avram Avinu if Yitzchak would be nekad, would be nishchat al gabi hamizbeach. And on the other hand, Sara, in Parshas, she died a natural death. Maybe it was in that period it was considered an untimely death. But she was 127 years old, and it was Shnei Chayei Sara Kulon Shavim L'Toiva. She had a great life. So what is and so it's hard to understand that this. He was afraid that thinking about it, he won't be able to hold back from thinking negatively about the Rebbeinu Shalom. The same Avram Avinu that was just Mekayim, the Kachno has been Chas Yechitzka Asher Ahavta. He's afraid of this. Through Rashi brings another pshat, Vayove Avram mi Be'er Sheva Lispoid l'Sorvel of Koisav and Ismach Amisa Sora la'Akedes Yitzchok l'Fisha al Yidei B'Soras ha'Akedes and his Damen B'no l'Shchita Kumat Shalei Nishchat Porcha Nishmasa Mimeno. So we're talking about an unnatural death, let's say. But nevertheless, Avram was willing to shecht Yitzchok. Now we're talking about the collateral damage. That Sarah died. So he was able to do the thing itself, and he's afraid that he won't be able to contain his thoughts, and he won't be able to control himself, and he'll be upset at the Rebbeinu Shalom because Sarah died. So Reishis Kol Avada, as Chazal say, Al Tamin Ba'atzmecha Ad Yoim Moischa. A person should not rely on himself, even if he's a great and accomplished person and he's been oimed in many nisyonis, he still should do whatever he can to stay away from another nisyon. But I think there's another point over here. we say, "V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol ma'odecha." So nafshecha, we learn afilu hu noitelas nafshecha, that a yid is mechuyev if there's a choice of worshiping avodah zarah or being killed. The halacha is yehoreg va'al yavar. He's mechuyev to give up his life, and we learn that from b'chol nafshecha afilu hu noitelas nafshecha. What's uv'chol ma'odecha? The Rashi says in Parshas V'eschana, really the Mishnah in the beginning of Perek HaRoya, Rashi says, "B'chol ma'odecha, b'chol ma'oidcha, b'chol memoincha." Yesh lecha adam shememoinoi chaviv olav migufoi lokach nemar b'chol ma'odecha. In other words, means all your money. But the we just said you should give up your life. So why are we talking now about money? So Rashi says, there's yesh lecha adam shememoinoi chaviv olav migufoi. It could be a person that's willing to give up his life, but he's not willing to give up his money. But we have to understand exactly what kind of thing that is. But that's the first shot in Rashi. Then Rashi says, Davar hake, that what's b'chol mo'idecha, b'chol mideh u'mideh shehu mo'ideh lecha. Every measure that he measures to you, bein b'midah toive, bein b'midas puronos, whether it's good or bad. V'chein u'ayme b'David. Kois Yeshuois Esa, V'Shem Hashem Ekru. Sara v'Yogen Emsa, V'Shem Hashem Ekru. So whether it's a Kois Yeshuois or it's a Sara v'Yogen, it's always V'Shem Hashem Ekru, and that's B'chol Mo'idecha, B'chol Mida U'Mida Shu Mo'ideh L'cha. Question is like this. According to the first shot, we explained that why do we have to say B'chol Mo'idecha after we said B'chol Nafshecha? Because Yesh L'cha Adam Shem Emoinoi Chaviv Olav Yosem Igufoi. But according to the second shot, that b'chol mo'idecha means b'chol mida u'mida shu mo'ideh lecha. Sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you have a bad day, sometimes things are up, sometimes things are down, and you should never lose your avas Hashem. B'chol mida u'mida shu mo'ideh lecha bein mida toiva bein midas peronos. No, but this person, he already is b'chol nafshecha. He's willing to give his life up for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So why do we need to say that he shouldn't lose his ava on a bad day? The midas peronos, the ultimate of midas peronos is losing his life. And that we already said. And now we add uvechol mo'idecha. So it would seem that there's a fundamental difference between a situation in which a person is active and he's doing mitoich bechira, he chooses a path, he chooses to do something, he gives his life up al kiddush Hashem, or a situation where a person is passive, he has no choices, he's suffering, it happens to him, he's not part of it. When a person is proactive and he's making choices, he's expressing himself. Whereas when a person is suffering passively, his sense of self becomes diminished. He becomes humiliated. The Tzelem Elokim is meant to create, to do, to be mashpia, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yoitzer Olamis. Man is meant to Shebor Elokim La'asos. And when a person chooses and does, he's Moiseh his nefesh al kiddush Hashem, he's doing something. But when a person is suffering without choice, so that puts him down. We say there's Miras, there's a Friday night, there's Riboin Kol Ha'olomim, Adon Kol Ha'masim. So it says over there, V'echlapti sim lo yisai l'chvoid yom HaShabbos, change my clothing for Shabbos. Uvasi leveischa lahapil t'chinasi lefanecha. I came to your house, to the Beis HaKnesses, to daven. Shetavir anchosi, v'oid asher barosa b'shisha yomim kol hayitzur. I'm a spal. I came to shul to be mispal that you should remove anchosi, you should remove my size. and I shall testify that in 6 days you created the entire universe. I mean, what's the connection? I mean, Tavir anchosi va'oid asher borosa b'shisha yomim kol hayitzur. Only if HaKadosh Baruch Hu will remove my problems will I testify that He created the world. Why? What's the hemshech? Shetaver anchosi va'oid asher borosa. I think it might be the Rambam Paskins in Hilchos Eidus, Perik Yud Aleph Halacha Hey, that a bozui is pasul la'edus. A bozui is a disgraced person, is pasul la'edus. A person who lacks dignity is pasul la'edus. That's the halacha of ha'oichel b'shuk. Doima lekelef is pasul la'edus because he's a man without dignity, meaning that a person's word is a word only because he has a sense of dignity, and he won't say what's not true. That's the yesod of his ne'emonos. But a person that's a bozui, a person that has no sense of dignity, so he can say anything. He's not trustworthy. So it would seem that when a person is in a state of anchosi, he loses his dignity. He's stripped of his covet, and therefore he can't give edus. And therefore we say, Shetavir anchosi, va'oid asher barosa b'shisha yomim kol hayitzur, because only if I will have my dignity will I be able to testify. You know, the pasuk says, Yikraeni ve'enehu imoy onoichi b'tzora achaltzeu v'achabdeu. So, yeah, the man is in a tzara. Achaltzeu, we understand, he needs to be released from the tzara, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is promising him, Achaltzeu, I will release him from his tzara. But what's v'achabdeu? And I will give him honor. Who's talking over here about honor? I mean, he's in a tzara. I mean, it's not about covet. Teretz is because when a person is in a tzara, besides for the tzara itself, he loses his dignity. When a person is suffering, he becomes he becomes small in his own eyes, and therefore he needs to have his covet restored. And the Rebbeinu Shalom promises him achaltzeu va'achabdeu. Therefore, the nisayon of b'chol midah u'midah she'umoided l'cha, bein midah toiva, bein midas peronus, is a greater nisayon than the nisayon of b'chol nafshecha. If I give up my nefesh, I'm expressing myself. But if I'm suffering, b'chol midah u'midah she'umoided l'cha, he's being moided, and I'm just on the receiving end. So I lose my chashivas and I become a nothing and a nobody. So Avram Avinu, he was oiked as benoi, and he was oiked his entire osid al gabi hamizbeach. He sacrificed everything. But nevertheless, he's afraid that he won't be able to deal with what is being taken from him. And Sara, she just died on him. And that's in a sense harder than doing something. So how does one deal with that? He throws himself into doing. In other words, he thinks about what, I mean, the suffering is the suffering, but the question is, what does it mean in terms of what I need to do? What is my responsibility? Miloshin response. How do I respond to this situation? It's not just about being on the receiving end of reality, but it's about what am I meant to do right now? And it's not about the lispoid lisara, it's not about the livkoisa, it's about vayakam avrome alpnei meisa, and he's Isaac in buying a makom kibura because that's his responsibility right now. The Mishnah says, "B'chol moedecha, b'chol midah u'midah shu moedeh lecha, have a moedeh loy." That's the Lashon HaMishnah in the beginning of the 9th parak in Brachas. In other words, the pasuk says moedecha, your moed. If we're saying that it's b'chol midah u'midah shehu moedeh lecha, so it's not ma'oidecha. So the Mishnah is saying, b'chol mida u'mida shu moided l'cho, havei moide loy. Moide in the sense of, first and foremost, in the sense of admission and acceptance. So the true, what's happening to you is happening to you, but you still have the choice of attitude, and you still have the choice of accepting or not accepting, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and therefore we say that you can turn that ma'oid into ma'oidecha. How can you turn that ma'oid into ma'oidecha? When you take the midah u'midah she'u'moidelecha and you use it in order to be moideloi, that's your response. Then you really became proactive and you really dealt with it, and that will enable you to preserve the ava, and even develop the ava. You know, there's a very beautiful in the Tiferes Yisrael in on that Mishnah in Brachas, in the Boyaz, from the son of the Tiferes Yisrael, he says, "Sheher lanu ha-Mishnah kan, eich ha'odam yochol lios oise atzmoi lemoishel al mazoloi." How a person can become a moishel on his mazel. His mazel is his mazel. And if he's out of luck, I mean, he's not going to become lucky. So how could a person become a moishel al mazoloi? So he says, "Tachas she'odam acher hu ke'eved nimshol mi mazoloi." וזה שאומר המשנה, בכל מידה ומידה שהוא מוידד לך, שבבחינה זו, אתו הנפעל והנמשול, as long as it's midah u'midah שהוא מוידד לך, so you are the nif'al, you are the nimshal, you're being controlled. Havi moide loy b'moid, she'oz ato hapoil, because then you're not passively receiving, but you're actively accepting. And he says in German, die materielle Passivkeit umwandelt sich in eine religiös-moralische Aktivität und Selbstständigkeit, meaning that the material passiveness is transformed into a religious moral activity and independence. And that's the idea of b'chol moedecha, b'chol midah u'midah shehu moeded lecha, have a moedeloi. So that's a way that a person can ride from every matziv by responding that way and taking control of his destiny, not necessarily in the sense of taking control of the objective reality, because a person is not in control of his objective reality, but he could take control of his subjective reaction. And that's the Havei Moide Loi. And in this sense, a person can preserve the V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha and develop the V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. Rabbi Sai, I want to seize this opportunity to wish you all a good Shabbos.